Welcome to Branding Room Only, the podcast where your personal brand gets a front row seat. I'm Paula Edgar, and if you're here, it's because you know your brand isn't just about what you do. It's about how people experience you. In each episode, you'll hear stories, strategies, and lessons from leaders and influencers who built their brands and made their mark. And I'll share the tools you need to do the same. Let's go. Hi, everybody. It's Paula Edgar, and welcome back to the Branding Room. We are in for a treat today because I said so. We are having a conversation with one of my best friends, Carl Forbes Jr. Let me tell you about Mr. Forbes Jr. Carl Forbes Jr. is the founder and managing attorney of CFJ Law, PLLC, a Brooklyn-based firm focused on real estate planning, probate, estate litigation, and guardianship across New York. A first-generation American of Jamaican heritage and past president of the Metropolitan Black Bar Association, Carl is a recognized leader committed to advancing equity and excellence in the legal profession. And like I said, he's my friend, y'all. Welcome to the Branding Room, Carl.
Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
I'm so excited for this. So we have been talking about doing this for a very long time, so we're finally here.
Life be lifing.
Life be lifing. Let's start with number one, which is, what does personal brand mean to you? How would you define it?
It means everything, right? To me, I define it as what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so for me, it's what have I cultivated in terms of my reputation that precedes me. And so to me, there's nothing else personally or professionally than your brand. It says everything about who you are. Whether you think your brand is one thing, if it shows up as something else, you got to reevaluate. And I learned that from a good friend of mine.
I was about to say, look at me out here doing God's work.
Yeah.
So that being said, how would you describe yourself in 3 words or short phrases?
I am a compassionate, introverted extrovert who deeply loves people.
Let me go ahead and take dealer's choice because it's my podcast, and let me think about how I would describe you in 3 words.
Okay.
Intense, in all good ways. And this is a line, I guess. I would say dedicated to core. I feel like when you put your mind to something, I know it's going to get done. And finally, fun.
I like that.
All right. What is a favorite quote or motto that you have?
It's actually one that I've had for a long time. I don't know where I got it from, so I say I made it, which is be better today than you were yesterday and better tomorrow than you are today.
Love it. And when I think about that, it's particularly connected to brand. I always tell people you don't have any competition but you. So that aligns like that.
And that's how I tend to focus, right? Is how can I be better than my previous self and aspire to continue to achieve things that only I can dream of.
So this is going to be an interesting answer, no matter what it is. So when they're about to get full Carl Forbes Jr., what song is playing in your head? What is your hype song?
So I want to say anything dancehall, right? Being Jamaican, and in thinking about this in advance, since of course you being you gave some prep. I was thinking about Welcome to Jamrock, but it's not really appropriate. So I think back to when I used to travel more so, commute for work, and what I would be playing, and it's Rick Ross, Every Day I'm Hustling. And I don't know if you remember that meme where like persons all dressed professionally and they might already be in the office. They've got headphones on, but what's blasting in their ears is something a little ratchet.
Yes.
Right. And so because again, I look at life as a hustle. In order to achieve, I've got to hustle. So every day I'm hustling.
I like it, especially because it's aligned. So I have multiple hype songs. Everybody knows that Baby I'm a Star by Prince is mine. But I have a playlist of like when I need to get myself hyped up. And one song on there is Cassidy, I'm a Hustler, which, quotes Jay-Z in there. And so I like the hustle alignment.
And we know how I feel about Jay-Z, so,
Yes. Also, my tagline for my business is Engage Your Hustle. So we have a lot of hustle going on here. Tell me this. Where did you grow up? And how did that shape you?
Brooklyn born and raised, again, hence why I love Jay-Z. I mean, Brooklyn shaped me in such a formidable way. I think that you have to be a little gritty, right? Even if you're not necessarily in the streets and street adjacent, as I would say. But it teaches you a resolve and a toughness that has carried me through life. And so being able to be book smart but street smart at the same time, I owe to my upbringing in Brooklyn and Jamaican heritage, which I think is impacted even more so being in Brooklyn. So when I'm in Jamaica and people think I was born there, and they're like, "Where are you from?" I'm like, "Brooklyn." They're like, "Oh." I'm like, "Yeah, right." It's like the third city of Jamaica, basically.
Yes, it is. So tell us about your career path.
Very condensed version. I knew since I was a kid I wanted to be a lawyer, probably 10, 11 years old. And I was attracted to the courtroom, right? That is definitely what sort of drew me in. I argued a lot as a child.
Still.
In a more productive manner, right? And so that was part of what led me to fall in love with the law, is realizing that I could argue constructively. So I did debate team in high school. My high school, shout out to Sheepshead Bay High School in Brooklyn, technically doesn't exist anymore, but they had a law program. So we did mock trial. And as I got older and started to understand a little bit more, didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I was still attracted to the law because of the diversity, the fact that there are so many practice areas that you could move between, and not realizing I ultimately would do that in my career and practice in many different fields. And so I was blessed enough to have my sights set on that dream and ultimately accomplish it, even though my mother wanted me to be a doctor.
Jamaican mothers.
Yep.
So that is the highest high level of a career trajectory that I've ever heard. So I'm going to go because I know the answers to this. So after Sheepshead Bay, then what happened?
Yeah. So I went to Binghamton University, State University of New York, in upstate New York, was a philosophy, politics, and law major. So, of course, again, knew I was going to law school. This interdisciplinary major was attractive to me. And then I went to Columbia for law school.
Let's go back. I'm just thinking about brand alignment and all of the brand things that I know about him. So you're going to go maybe 2-3 minutes without hearing something about Binghamton, Brooklyn, Jamaica, or your fraternity.
Sure. Okay. Good point. I left out because I wasn't sure how high level, how much time we actually
This is about branding.
have. And so when I was at Binghamton, I'm a spring 2007 initiate of the Binghamton University, the Mu Kappa chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, the greatest fraternity known to God and man.
Okay, sign.
Which, again, has played a formidable role in my life. I've mentioned the word achievement a lot, and it's part of our creed and not just a buzzword. And so my development or professional trajectory has been impacted significantly by my brothers and the focus on supporting one another and achievement. And so that has been a critical part of my leadership and legacy, which I know we're going to get to speaking about, in terms of thinking beyond just myself, right, and focusing on the greater benefit of others in the community. And so Binghamton, likewise, has been great for my development. I was president of the Caribbean Student Association there. And as a 20-year-old, we used to throw a carnival in the sense that you'll see celebrations throughout the diaspora. And we managed, as a 20-year-old, a $100,000 budget for artists and performers for that. And so it was my first real taste, I'd say, of leadership in a way that didn't really make sense as a 20-year-old. And I always harken back to that because for me, it's like that was the sort of path that started to where I am today, and building that confidence and experience to feel comfortable doing anything in reality.
So because I know the story more, leadership in terms of how it impacts your brand from a young age is going to teach you people, communication, people, stewardship of responsibility, all those things. And I know that catalyst, speaks to who and what you are now. Talk to me. We stopped at Columbia. Keep going.
So just to go back on one other point, because you just reminded me of it in terms of communication, people, that's something that I have at times struggled with and focused on as a result of sometimes being too much of a people pleaser, sometimes not being direct enough. You made me think about my time with CSA and challenges I had with a few other board members that in ways became quite personal negatively, but in growing from that, I've become best friends with one of those people, right, that I had challenges with from a leadership perspective because we had different styles. We would butt heads all the time in meetings. And over time, I realized that, again, you have to figure out how to not make it about yourself.
Personal, yeah.
I don't like when people say don't make it personal. Everything's personal, right? In business, you go, it's not personal. Of course it is. It's personal and professional, right? Personal and professional oftentimes align or converge.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's not personal. It's that you have to remember the broader goal, oftentimes being not about you individually, about the greater good or community again. So post-Columbia, so started my career in the Great Recession, worked at the New York City Law Department initially in the Manhattan Family Court practice for a little over a year, and then started at Proskauer Rose, where I had summered or worked as a summer associate during law school. And I was a commercial litigation associate there, so doing your almost everything in terms of litigation, your general breach of contract, some securities litigation, antitrust litigation, bankruptcy litigation at one point, so almost anything, and a small bit of trust and estates litigation, which was sort of my first taste into what has become a major part of my career at this point. From Proskauer, went back to the New York City Law Department, where I then practiced in the Brooklyn tort division, so personal injury cases, mainly property damage, for a number of years. Went back to Proskauer, and then in 2018, started my own firm, which you highlighted in the beginning, focusing on empowering families and protecting legacy.
Yes, so I'm going to pull out Proskauer before we jump into the meat of the conversation, because as I mentioned, that Carl is a past president of the Metropolitan Black Bar, and so am I. And when I was president, we had somebody who was on our board who was a representative from Proskauer, and he was done with his term. He said he was done, and he had the right person for me. And when I think about branding, he basically said, don't worry, this is the person. And I was like, who is this person? I got to call them because, I trust but verify because I'm from Brooklyn. And there's not a lot of times when I think that we go from exactly what was said to it being even beyond my expectations. And so I didn't know that call was going to end up being one of my best friends 10 years later. But when I talk about the power of community and collaboration, but also the power of trusting based on a referral and a recommendation, because I took that, right? I didn't make a call, but I said, usually this will not be the process that I would go through. And I was right. So that when somebody's talking about your reputation, you make sure you show up in the way that aligns with them putting themselves on line with you. So I wanted to pull that out before we jump into the conversation. All right. So what led you to specifically make a big part of your practice wills, trust, estate planning, and real estate law?
So it's two things. Originally, when I started my practice 8 years ago, which is now basically half my career, which is crazy to me, I was thinking about being a generalist, right? Again, my experience had been varied in terms of the litigation in various areas of the law. And so I felt I could do a little of everything. But it was two things leading up that helped me really focus. One, when I was still at Proskauer, two of my friends separately, one fraternity brother, one friend from college, both asked me to do wills for them. And I told them no, I could not. I had not had experience actually doing them. And two, I was working for Proskauer and could not moonlight as a result of that. But the more I started thinking about growing my practice, that sat with me and they kept saying, we're waiting. And I was like, okay, keep waiting, because at the time I wasn't sure, what I was going to do and then I got some experience, as I mentioned, on a trust, an estate litigation. Proskauer has a Boca Raton office for high net worth individuals. So here in New York, we were supporting the team there on a litigation that had some snowbirds, basically, who originally lived in New York, retired to Florida. So there were issues here in New York that they needed our assistance on. But mainly in 2017, my grandmother passed away. So my mother's mother. And my mother, as the executor of her estate, hired a law firm to assist her. But me being the lawyer in the family was coming to me about everything that they were doing and that she was dealing with related to grandma's estate. And it strangely comforted me that while we were all grieving, I had a purpose in helping my mother formally or through that process. And I decided at that point I had to make it a part of my practice because not just the estate planning piece, which I think I was already thinking about, but the probate estate administration, because I needed to do that for other people, to be a comfort through the legal challenges while you're dealing with the fact that you are living with grief, right? And figuring out whoever the loved one is, how to carry on. And so decided that while initially I was still going to try to be a generalist, that had to be part of my practice. Maybe I'm jumping, but naturally my practice coalesced around areas that just made sense from a community building legacy perspective. And I'm grateful for it. That same friend who asked me to do as well, I did. I did do plans for both of them. But that one's a business owner who told me from the beginning, don't generalize. Figure out your niche. And I was like, I can't. I got to take whatever comes in the door, right? Like, I have to make a living. This is new. I'm starting out on my own. And within 2 years, I was specialized. And he goes, see, I told you. And I was like, you were right. But I had to learn for myself.
It's a brand lesson because, you can't be all things to all people. And if you are, then that means you're not great in all of the different things because you're not, delving deeper in developing expertise. Also, I think part of what you said, what drives you in passion and value helps you to put more into something. So, you're talking about the catalyst from your grandmother passing away makes it show up differently than if you, were just like, la, la.
Absolutely.
Right.
I care more about it at the end of the day, which is important. And I'll say for people thinking about the area of work or just thinking about your brand, part of what makes it authentic is I struggle at times with the emotional parts of it. And the guardianship work I do are for adults. And so you see a lot of folks with cognitive decline, mental health issues, dementia, and it's taxing emotionally. If I did not care about it the way I do because of that catalyst you mentioned, I wouldn't still be doing it. It just becomes overwhelming if you're just focused on doing it because of the money at the end of the day. It doesn't justify it enough to make it worth it.
True. So you and I both have had many discussions, and we know how important legacy is. How would you define legacy, and how do you see it as connected to your personal brand?
So to think about a quote again, Maya Angelou is one of my favorite people ever, said that she's learned that people will forget what you said and people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel, right? And I think about legacy in that way in terms of what are people going to say or think or feel when I'm gone, right? And that's brand personified. Again, it's your brand carries on after you are gone. And so what I care about is that I'm ultimately remembered, one, by what I've imparted in my children, shout out to Savvy and Trey, and two, what I have done to better my community. At the end of the day, I don't need to be famous, right? I don't need my name in lights. But if there are people who can say he made a difference in our community, he helped impact someone that then continues it forward, to me, that's really what legacy is. The other way, of course, of thinking about it is from a financial perspective, which plays into the estate planning, building wealth, generational wealth, and passing it down to generations in hopes that you will provide a better life for those to come after you. So
I think it was a really succinct way of putting it. And
I feel like you think I'm being too succinct in this conversation.
No. If that's the case, I'm just going to call it out and pull the string a little bit more.
Right.
So all of you know my mother was killed on September 11th. And one of the things that I reflect on a lot about that experience and my mother's legacy is that My mother had gone through the process of engaging an attorney with my father, and they did have wills, but my mother died before signing her will. And I often reflect on the fact that if she didn't have a husband who loved her and was willing to do what she asked, her wishes may not have been carried out. And so when you talk about legacy and what is left over and what you leave behind, I think about this probably more than most people because it's personal to me. And so I wanted to have this conversation around estate planning, real estate, and legacy as a part of your brand because it truly is like, who were you and how did you add value? And how did you make sure that value that you amassed continues on or it went to wherever you wanted it to go to? And so why is estate planning not just about legal documents, but it is about protecting your brand, your family, and ensuring that your story continues?
I mean, you said it. The answer is in the question, right? But what it makes me think about is New York is a special place. So most other jurisdictions refer to the court as probate court. New York refers to it as surrogates court. And part of the thought is that the judge who's known as the surrogate sits in the place of the deceased person, right? And so what the court is focused on is the legacy, what the person's wishes were, right? Especially if they put a plan in place. We all have a plan, right? The law of intestacy says what happens if you have not put one in place or your plan fails or it's not sufficient. But it's about protecting what you have worked your life to acquire and put in place. It's setting your family up for success going forward. Now, some people don't necessarily care about that. Some people want their children to fend for themselves and figuring out. None of my friends feel that way, I'm sure. But that works for some people. But the idea is that I've worked hard. I have been diligent or thought considerably about what I have acquired in my life, decisions that I've made. Why shouldn't I protect that? In using a mechanism the law allows me to use to do so.
I want to go back to just make sure, because I know we're talking lawyer talk, but some people may not know what intestacy is and know what it means that they have a plan even if they don't have a plan. What you're saying is that the law says that, I think it goes down and up, right? Like any children that you have, get your stuff first if you have no plan, and then it goes up and over.
Well, surviving spouse.
Oh, right. I forgot about spouses.
First.
Right.
If no spouse, then children. And you're putting me on the spot in terms of
it's
the
parents.
List. Parents,
yes. And
then siblings.
Yeah.
And
I took that class a long time ago.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure they understood exactly what that meant. It meant that who the things were going to go to.
Well, one of the critical things there, right, and there's a list of family, and intestacy just means the person has died without a will or a substitute, such as a trust that would cover their estate. In the absence of a will. The critical thing in terms of the law is the last two classes on the list. Second to last being your first cousins and first cousins once removed. For a lot of people, it's going to include people you do not know. So not only is the possibility of people you don't know benefiting from your estate, finding those people becomes challenging for the administration of your estate. But final on the list is New York State. And after working hard and paying taxes, and New York State should not ever inherit from anyone, right? And so put things in place. But the reality is in this day and age, with blended families, for instance, if you don't put a plan in place, you don't create a will or a trust, your stepchildren, your step-siblings will not automatically inherit. If people are as kind-hearted as your father was in following what your mother wanted, great. But the law doesn't obligate people to do that. And with blended families, you never know what ends up happening. And the people you would want to benefit are not necessarily entitled to unless you take those steps to have your wishes properly documented.
I think I'm just like a type A control person.
No.
Shut it. And I think about the fact that it will be going to somebody who I did not say that's what I wanted. And people think about it in big picture, right? Like, oh, like my money. I think about like my favorite ring. Right, the things that I have that I want to go to my child. That if I didn't say it's going to my child, it could not. Who knows? And I failed sharing in kindergarten, and so it really triggers me in that sense too, where it's like you should be able to say, well, your stuff. What happens to your stuff? And to your point, this should not go back to New York, but we have heard so many you've experienced horror stories, and I've heard horror stories both from around what's happened with you, but also just period in the news. Like we used to do a program about, celebrities. You all know I love Prince. Prince died without a will. Prince, who had amassed so many, like that estate is huge.
Yeah.
And I think
and lives on. That's right. Also part of the thing is that when you're in an enterprise as a musician who is you're publishing, your catalog's going to live on. There are going to be royalties.
Yeah.
You're setting up to leave a mess, especially when you've engaged with attorneys your whole life, right? Or business professionals in your field your entire life, but then for some reason decide, and I have ideas on some of the reasons I know we're going to get to as to why people don't necessarily in this space particularly.
Okay, so what are some of the biggest mistakes people make when it comes to estate planning? And what do those mistakes cost them in terms of family, wealth, and reputation?
So, one, not planning at all.
Yes.
Cheaping out on planning. And so I saw and I think this is actually more critical because the law covers what happens if you don't plan at all. But if you do plan and it's not necessarily clean, it may create issues. And so you have your various websites that for a few $100s, you can do your own will, for example. And I had a matter a number of years ago where an individual who passed away had printed out a will from the internet, couldn't tell, exactly where it came from. And it was executed properly, went through the proper execution. But for a will to be validated, there needs to be 2 attesting witnesses. The witnesses were there, and we normally include a self-proving affidavit from the witnesses. This way, ultimately, 10, 20, 30, 40 years later when the person dies, you don't have to find the witnesses for them to come testify in court to what took place. This will had the affidavit, but it was not in the form the court is used to seeing. So when I submitted the will for probate on behalf of my client, the court comes back and goes, we need an affidavit or affirmation from you, the attorney, telling us why we should accept the self-proving affidavit that was included. And basically, I had to spend my time, which is my client's money, writing an affirmation explaining this paragraph of the affidavit closely aligns with what we typically do or include here in New York, and so it's fine. And then the next paragraph and so on and so forth. Small example of just something that ends up costing money on the back end, which is what I find tends to happen. If people decide to save money now in the planning, you're going to end up costing your beneficiaries on the back end whenever you've passed because it may complicate the matter. And so I saw an interesting quote the other day, which to paraphrase goes something like, if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur.
It's true. When we think about where we invest and what we were willing to spend money on versus not, it's why it bothers me, because I want to talk specifically now to most of my listeners who are lawyers. A lot of you don't have estate plans. And it is egregious, in my opinion, because we know what happens when you don't. And nobody wants to die, but we all are going to die, right? And so if you're hearing my voice and you do not have a will or some kind of estate plan, please call Carl if you live in New York. So, all right. What other mistakes? Anything else that you want to pull out? That's the base.
Nothing else,
Okay. So you and I share Jamaican roots. A lot of mercy, but and in the Caribbean, and I think a lot of immigrant spaces, and just in general, so I don't want to just call out my peeps in the Caribbean. People have family members who will be like, "Oh, I don't care what happens, I'll be gone." meaning that they won't affirmatively plan. Why is that the wrong mindset? Can you share a couple of anecdotes about people failing to plan, avoiding the conversation while alive? What damage is done when that happens?
So I think it's the wrong mindset because we don't take that mindset with all that we do while living. Most people do not. And what I mean by that is that we lock the doors to our homes. We put fences or gates, right? Fences, walls around our homes for security purposes. I like to think about estate planning being the same for when you are gone. You have compiled these assets, which we refer to as your estate. Why wouldn't you continue to protect it? And you're protecting it legally. So I think part of the challenge people have is that's not tangential to them, right? They are thinking about, well, I've protected it physically and that makes sense to me. But to spend the money, and that's what it comes down to a lot of the times. And I like that you said earlier, it's an investment, because that's really how you should think about it, as an investment. A colleague said to me, part of how they get through and breaking the psychology that people have, or the psychological block they have around planning is, and it's not a perfect example because if you own a car, you're forced to have insurance, but you have it. And you pay whatever thousands of dollars a year to insure your vehicle. Think of the investment in estate planning in the same way. You are spending, hopefully one time, sometimes you need to update and so, but you are spending to insure everything.
Yes.
Right? And not just, again, I don't want to focus just on the financial or the assets, but if you have minor children, putting plans in place for their upbringing, God forbid you pass before they become adults and there's nobody to care for them, right? It's better that you have designated who should take care of your children, addressed how financially they should be cared for, than then leaving it to a court proceeding to determine what's in their best interest and who is going to be responsible for their care at the end of the day. And I always highlight this with my clients particularly is we often think about our parents first. And right now, my mother helps to care for my two children, right? But my mother is also a senior citizen at this point. If something were to happen to me and my wife, my mother can't care for them day in and day out, or even if she wanted to, she shouldn't have to, right? Yeah. She's already raised children and in the later years of life is happy being a grandparent. To go back to being a parent basically doesn't make sense. But we just think, oh yeah, they'll figure it out and somebody will. And so that's what I see a lot of in terms of the pitfalls of failing to plan and say, well, it won't matter, I'll be gone. But to me, then, what's the point of having children, right? What is the point of protecting while you're alive if you're just going to let be whatever's going to be when you're gone?
And there's also a presumption in there that we are going to be blessed with a long life. And, I think if nothing else, COVID had a lot of people shaken up because of loss that was unexpected. But loss is unexpected every day, right? And it's hard to reflect because nobody wants to think about, right, being gone. But, there's so many things, there's crime, there's sickness, there's mistake, there's things. And so...
And I said I was going to come to this point in talking about our Jamaican roots, but it goes beyond, as you said, is there's also superstition and the belief that if I plan for my death, I'm going to die. Or I'm going to quicken or my death. And the reality is, as far as we all know, we are all going to die at some point. And I say that because until you die, you don't really know, right? But as far as we know, and I don't think there's evidence that if you plan for it,
right?
But it's not planning for it. You're planning to protect when it happens to ensure that in reality, you carry on. Like we love to talk about how the spirit lives on with us and you'll never, but if you properly plan, that very much can be the case, right? And it makes me think about the Bob Marley estate. And a lot of credit goes to Rita Marley for what she has done in terms of cultivating that enterprise into a place that Bob's legacy lives on forever as a result of the work she did to ensure his estate was properly administered and built up into ongoing business in reality.
As his wife.
So, yes. As good wives do, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of drama and celebrity deaths. Okay. So you also practice real estate law and you also invest in real estate. How do you see real estate ownership as part of building and protecting legacy?
I love real estate and it's twofold. One, I like it's tangible, it's real. That's part of why under the law you call it real property. But what you can do in terms of transforming a space and for your home and your well-being, there's so much security you get from real estate. But from a wealth building perspective, especially here in New York, real estate's an asset that appreciates significantly, right? And the reality, especially here in New York, is even in the Great Recession, where that was driven by subprime lending and real estate collapses throughout the country, New York was sort of staved from that because New York is unique. But real estate allows for, as I see it, wealth building because of that appreciation. And so a place here in Brooklyn that someone paid $500,000 for 10 years ago, it's worth close to $1 million, if not more than $1 million, right? The average home value in New York, in Brooklyn now is $900,000 or so. And so you think about the fact that you invest in an asset that, one, benefits you from living there and providing security, but grows in value to a place that you can leverage it for the benefit of you and your family and pass it down to generations so that they're not starting from scratch when it comes to life and the opportunities to pull equity to fund their education, for example, or to buy another home or to make some form of a business investment. And the reality for our community is that we've been disadvantaged in this space, right? Starting from chattel slavery and the fact that we could not own property. And so many of the largest corporations and high net worth individuals are built on generations of using the laws to their benefit, planning properly so that they transfer as efficiently as possible and giving the next generation a leg up. And I'm excited about the fact that, one, in having this conversation, we are, as a community, in a place where we care about this significantly at this point. And so the voices who say, I don't care, I'll be gone, are starting to really be in the background compared to the people who call and go. I was in the barbershop and they were talking about I should have a trust, right? Or I should put my home into a trust. Or I should create a life estate deed and put my children as the remainder men to just drop a legal term. Don't ask what it... I could tell. Okay. I could go into what it means if you want, but I think it just sounds cool to say remainder men or remainder people, right?
Sure,
right. But the fact that people will call now and say, I was hanging out and somebody was talking about this. This isn't conversations that we were having 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and I wasn't because I was in Binghamton, right, throwing carnival. But the fact is that's what happens personally as we grow and we have gathered information. A lot of it is sharing that information so that people understand the benefits. And with real estate, I think one of the greatest services that has been done is killing the misconception that you have to have 20% down. I remember when that's all people would talk about, not realizing that there's so many loan options and programs out there where you can have, if you're a veteran, 0% down, right? Otherwise, there are programs where you can put as low as 3.5% down, whether FHA or conventional loan options. And so that, in terms of that piece, helps people provide access, essentially, for people to invest in or own real estate for themselves that they can then benefit from in various ways.
Right, because I think that to your point about communities who have been disadvantaged, when things like that are in the space, that becomes a block that you don't even try, right? So you're not even investing in the thing because it's been so clear that you need that 20%, right?
Right.
And so
I'm not even going to try, right?
Right, exactly. So we talked about us both having this shared experience of having been the president of the Metropolitan Black Bar Association. How do you feel like leadership has shaped your brand, and how do you see it connecting to your legacy?
Yeah. That experience particularly, and since I've learned so much about myself in terms of refocusing myself on being more direct, I think I had reached a point where I was trying to make everyone happy and to get along as opposed to being focused on being effective as a leader. And my time with MBBA as a president and prior really helped me to refocus on the fact that to be effective, I needed to get people to buy in, but it had to be targeted. It had to be direct around where they were falling short, recognizing where I might be falling short or where I needed to shore things up, where I needed to delegate, which is something that I have struggled with for a very long time. When I was at Proskauer, my assistant would joke when I would get up to make my own copies, and she'd look at me and go, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm just not used to saying to someone, "Hey, can you print this for me? Can you do it?" when it'll take me 1 minute to do, but it's like, that's not your function, right? And so that being over 10 years ago, still carried that into my time with MBBA and learned a lot around the fact that to be an effective leader, I had to sharpen those skills. And thinking about legacy, I believe that leadership is about service. It's caring about those who are in your charge or who you are responsible for and their development. And so for me, it was never about me. And it's probably why also I gave the most truncated version of my background because, again, in this conversation, it's about the leadership and legacy. It's not about me as a person. It could be anyone in this chair, but it could not.
No, it couldn't.
Right, exactly. And I've learned that over time because I do bring something unique in that I am a servant leader who cares deeply about people, right? About humans as beings and the fact that we have so much to offer to one another. And what truly strikes me as wonderful about MBBA and some of our sister bars is that bar associations generally focus on the betterment of attorneys, right? Being a support system for attorneys and judges potentially. But we focus on it all. The community also, right? It's not just about supporting one another's attorneys, programming for attorneys, but how can we support the community through clinics, workshops, things of that nature. And so to me, that's the legacy point, right? Is that my leadership, in my mind, not only grew the organization and connected us both to our past as well as the future in terms of the trip we did to Ghana, for example. So for those who may end up watching this or however, my outfit is by design, right? I thought about it in terms of what I would wear. And the turtleneck aside, my outfit was custom made in Ghana during the Metropolitan...
Flex on us then. Go ahead.
During the Metropolitan Black Bar Association's trip to Ghana in celebration of the organization's 40th anniversary, right? And that was, in thinking about legacy, an opportunity to expand our reach, right? To bring folks from the diaspora back to the motherland. I say back to because that's how they were focused on it when we're in Ghana, is that you are from here, welcome back, right? And so thinking about the legacy beyond just the law, but about our people, right, and what we have been through. That's why earlier I said chattel slavery specifically, because there's a lot of this talk these days about the fact that slavery existed well before what it was in the Americas, right? But not in the way it was here.
Right.
And so you have to, words matter, and you have to, and that's a big part of brand for me, is that words matter. And I think that people are too loose with words and how they say things. And we live in a day and age where people are just cavalier with how they say things as if nothing matters, right? And so,
My feedback about leadership is I don't like group projects. My second piece of feedback is I don't believe that any leader should lead without creating other leaders. And so when I think about part of my brand is I have a lot of my mentees have become leaders. And I'm honored to be able to have been a catalyst in that space for so many because we need strong leadership. You know, like Prince, call him back again. Say, you want a leader, you're going to make up your mind. Anyway, okay.
You made me think about that in terms of, to bring a sports analogy, a football coaching tree. So a lot of successful head coaches, they'll often talk about other coaches who became head coaches and they're now part of their legacy or their tree, as they'll call it. And I agree. Similarly, is
so I have
that
a leadership tree?
Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
Exactly.
I like it.
And that is, it's critically important because it speaks volumes to you paying it forward.
How do you want your legacy to be remembered, both professionally and personally?
I think they're one and the same at this point, in that I cared less about myself and more about people, more about the community, right? And so whenever I'm gone, again, I want my impact to be seen through what I've imparted in my children. And that matters significantly to me because some people have children for fun, right? And and I think that it's, I don't want to say a calling, but it's to continue your legacy, right? It is you are an extension of me in a true sense, right? Blood, but also what I have done to raise you into a good human being and someone who leaves some type of a mark on the world. And so my hope is absolutely that my children become better than me because of who I have been and who I continue to strive to be. My wife said to me the other day that me being a bit of a perfectionist, she sees it in our daughter. And just a funny example, our son, who's 4 months, she had got him to relax, put his pacifier in his mouth, which he doesn't do the pacifier a lot. And our daughter looked and the pacifier was upside down in that logo. It's like a whale or something. And so she took it out and turned it. And of course, that disturbed him. But she's saying it because she takes after me, and the perfectionist is, well, this is wrong, so it needs to be fixed. I just want to get the comment about the kids in there.
I was already going to say that his daughter's already better than him, so it's fine. She's already done more. She's going to be president of the United States someplace else, hopefully.
And I'm happy you mentioned, because I was going to mention that because in the last year, she'll be 5 this year, and in the last year, she has started randomly saying to me, Daddy, do you want to be president? And I'm like, no. And she goes, why not? I was like, just not interested. Like, it's not something. She goes, I think I'll try it.
And
right?
And we will pull this as B-roll when she is campaigning. I feel like we said it.
And to your and a few weeks ago, she goes, you want to be president or mayor? So now she understands like a little bit about. And I was like, no. She goes, I think I'll try it. Like it's something that. And that's what you want. And so for me, if that ultimately happens in terms of I've spurred them to do something greater, that while I like to be in the background a little more, I have no problem with leadership, right? Clearly, I end up leading because I feel a calling to do it, but I'm not out here just looking to be at the top of something. But if I spur that in them because naturally it makes sense, that's great. Professionally, just to tie it, is if people can say that we were informed to the point that we no longer needed to hear from Carl because it's ingrained at this point, then I've done my job, right? And less about the call Paula made to call me if you don't have a plan, which call me, but you don't have to. I care more about the information so that at some point you wake up and go, you know what? I got to do this. And you go to somebody, right?
Yes.
You go to somebody to do it because at the end of the day, it matters.
It does matter. And that's a perfect way to segue into my final questions. So I asked the same set of questions to folks as we close. One, I'm afraid of what you're going to answer, but what do you do for fun?
I love to travel, right? There is probably nothing more fun to me than traveling and food, right? And I appreciate food for the cultural aspects. And so a lot of times travels are designed around places with good food that are important to that culture. But I appreciate the art of food also. And so I get excited about chefs who put a lot of love into what they're doing and think about their food as art. But on a more sort of day-to-day level, I love music. I'm a big sports fan, so baseball and football these days. Mets. Shout out to the Mets.
I was just saying that because I don't want to be fined. Okay.
40 years since the last championship, and I say that being a Mets fan builds. Yeah,
I remember it.
Okay, it builds character, right? And so being a long-suffering Mets.
All right.
But yeah, I just and I like to do this, right? And so we're recording a podcast, but I truly love to just hang with my friends and talk and connect with each other. And that was one of the hardest things in the pandemic was, and what I don't like a lot now in this sort of hybrid world is there's too much virtual, right? And there is just something special about being able to sit in front of someone who's not in a computer screen where you can't feel the emotions and the energy. And so I just love sitting down and talking to people.
I agree. So I have 2 points that I always ask folks for the podcast, which is one, what is the authentic aspect of your personal brand that you will never compromise on?
I'm not sure how to answer that, right? Because I wanted to say that I'm me, but that does not answer
for you?
Integrity.
I think that's what the answer came up for me for you, but because I think it's talking about values in the question.
You're right, and that's why I said that. And this aside, because you'll make the pitch for me, and that is part of brand. Is again when I'm not in the room or other people, but I am not in this for money. Right? I am in this because I care about people and I want us to care about the things that we should because others have tried to keep it from us, right? And the system's been designed to disadvantage us. And for me, it's community over everything because it does take a village and we can go further together. And I'm getting cliche, but I feel like that's what it asks for. So, but I like that. Integrity, you're right.
Yeah.
And that's why I said it's me. I was like, I'm true to myself,
it's
right?
It's just the thing that's here, that's me.
I'm true to myself. But you got the word I couldn't think of in the moment, so.
Okay. All right. So final question, which is Branding Room Only is a play on Standing Room Only because I'm clever. So what is your magic? What is that thing that would have a room full of people, no seats available, standing to see and experience about you? What's your magic?
Wow, you and these like describe yourself questions. I connect to people. Yeah, I in that room, I will be able to reach everyone, right? Because I have worked hard and I recognize, and it's taken me a while to admit I have an ego, right?
As do we all.
And a lot of people don't want to admit it because they think of it as a negative, right? But what I've realized is I know when to downplay, when to play up, when to sort of put myself in the background a bit and when to be more forward. So in a room that is standing room only, or for better purposes, branding room only, I'd be able to connect to everyone because of my integrity and compassion and experiences.
Well, as I'm very honored to be connected to you. How can folks find out more about you and your work and connect with you?
I can't believe we're done. Like can we keep going? Because
no, because I'm hungry.
CFJLawNYC.com. On socials, it's CFJ Law NYC, LinkedIn, CFJ ESQ or Esquire. So, reach out. I'm happy to talk. I love doing workshops, church groups, community groups. Happy to speak there as well as one-on-one for those who have questions. A lot of lawyers don't. I like to have general conversations and impart some information where I can. If it turns into a client relationship, great. But if I have dispelled a notion or added a bit of information to someone, I'm happy because the returns come in other ways. So.
Awesome. Somebody with a good brand is somebody who shares information and is a catalyst for other people to have good brands. And your job as somebody who's building your brand right now is to share this with everybody you know, particularly those of them who are not and have not invested in their estate planning yet. My passion is to make sure that everyone is at least thinking strategically about what they're going to do when they're no longer here anymore, what's going to happen to their things. And that's a part of your legacy. So tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, and also tell an enemy, because I want them to also have an estate plan as well. I'll see you next time in the Branding Room, everybody. Bye. That's it for this episode. I appreciate you hanging out with me on Branding Room Only. Now, please do me a quick favor. Head over to ratethispodcast.com/branding so more people can join this conversation. And make sure to stop by paulaedgar.com/events to see what's next. Whether I'm live, online, or in person, I'd love to see you there. See you next time in the Branding Room. And until then, stand tall, shine bright, and always stand by your brand.